All right, so I'm gonna flip to my slides. I think I have it somewhere here. So yeah, we have some slides today to go through. Like I said, it's gonna be an introductory class, but then we have to discuss the theory, theoretical aspect of JavaScript. So today we're looking at introduction to JavaScript. So what is JavaScript? That what we have on the screen is our table of content. So we're looking at introducing JavaScript, how to set up JavaScript, or what do we even need to do to set up JavaScript? Do we need to install any software? We'll learn about that. And then your first JavaScript program. How do you write your first JavaScript program? Then we'll also look at um, console introduction, how to make use of your web console. And I think we've looked at this. I think was it the first or second week or so. Then we'll also talk about code structure. How do you structure your code in JavaScript? What are variables? This is very, very important. Variables are like pieces of data like that you pass around your code that is stored in the memory. So we'll see how to declare variables in JavaScript. Data types. What are data types? How do you yes, I'm going to give her the soft copy of this. So data types, then type conversion and coercion. We'll talk about that as well. Is JavaScript dynamic? Is it a weakly typed language? So we'll look at that as well. Then operators in JavaScript. Operators, for example, addition, subtraction, equality, greater than, less than, those mathematical operations that we are used to. Yes, we make use of them in programming. So that's why this is a proper programming language, not like HTML and CSS that we've looked at. So this talks about operators as well. Then there is the concept of arrays. What are arrays? How do you make use of arrays in JavaScript? And then you cannot develop or write a program without control flows, your control structures. How do you direct? How do you instruct your program to do this instead of that? How do you instruct your program to do things multiple times? How do so all that is under the flow of controls in JavaScript. And of course, in other programming languages, in high-level programming languages, you have all these features built into it. Is it Python? Is it Java? Is it C#, C++? You see all these basic features available in those programming languages. And then functions. What are functions in JavaScript? And lastly, what are objects in JavaScript? So this is just, of course, this doesn't cover everything about JavaScript. No. In fact, nobody can cover everything about a programming language. But just to introduce us to this unique dynamic language, I feel these are the things that we need to start with. Then later on, we can now go advanced, talking about frameworks, talking about different things, different aspects of the program. So now we'll move on to explaining what JavaScript is. So what is JavaScript? JavaScript is a high-level programming language. Let me start from there. When we were for those who had the opportunity of taking a computer science course, maybe in college or in the university, we're told that there are different types of programming languages. There is low level, there is machine language, there is high level, and all that. So it is high level because it is not zeros and ones, right? It is not a machine language. You can basically understand what the syntax represent, even though you may not know the meaning, but at least is written in plain English language. For example, integer, for example, boolean, for example, console, it is written or it is developed, in plain high level language for us to understand. Imagine having to program in zeros and ones in the early 50s and 60s. It required a high level of of expertise or intelligence, for you to be able to program in zeros and ones. And later on, assembly language also came in, where you could, instead of writing zeros and ones, they were writing in modules or in functions or something. So again, it's a high-level programming language. It is versatile, right? You can use it in different places, as we'll see in the course of the training. And then it is primarily used in web development. It is primarily used in web development. So we can see that it is primarily used in web development. So it develops it or to create a dynamic or interactive features on websites. So that's what we'll be looking at today. Also, what are the other features of JavaScript? It initially was developed to add interactivity to static HTML pages. So this was the original intent of creating JavaScript. I don't know if you've read or if you've heard of the story of how JavaScript was written. It was written just within 10 days. There was a company known as Netscape in those days, in the 90s. So in the 90s, there was an internet company called Netscape. They were the owners of Netscape Navigator. Netscape Navigator used to be one of the browsers in those days. Microsoft was out, Netscape was a thing, and I think Mozilla too was around in those days. Google was not around then. So they needed to compete. Microsoft was like the big boss in the tech world in those days. But this Netscape needed to be able to compete with Microsoft. And I think they were just about releasing that particular browser, and they needed to introduce interactivity to the browser and all that. And there was a guy who was saddled with the responsibility of creating a language that can do that can introduce interactivity to the web page, change color, validate things, make something jump up and down, things like that. So it was written just within 10 days. And of course, trust me, there were many bugs. And some of those bugs still actually carry over to JavaScript till today. And that is why we have other languages that try to solve those problems, like TypeScript, for example. In JavaScript, it is not a strongly typed language, meaning that if you define a particular variable as integer, in the next line you can assign a string to that same variable. We're going to look at all that. Somebody said, what are bugs? So bugs are just errors in your code. Bugs are errors in your code. I believe the term bug was borrowed from the original meaning of bug. When you have a bug on you want to remove that bug, right? If you have like a cockroach or an ant, or on you, all of a sudden, you're not at peace. You want to remove that bug from you so that you can keep on functioning. So that is what bugs are in programming. When you have errors, when you have things that make your program not to compile well, not to work well, they are called bugs. So you try to debug or remove those bugs from your code. So now let's move on. So why do we need to learn JavaScript? I have here, JavaScript is the primary programming language that works directly, that's the key word, works directly in the browser. So with JavaScript, you don't need to translate or recompile to another thing. Directly, once you run your code, the JavaScript engine on your browser is able to understand the source code that you've written. Is able to understand the source code, and then so it works directly with the browser. So that means that JavaScript is very powerful. It is like the most popular the most popular programming language used presently for modern website development. And we'll see, look at that. There is a survey that Stack Overflow conducts every year to kind of have an idea of the landscape around technology, what people use, what is the most popular, and things like that. So JavaScript has really been awesome. We said JavaScript was developed just within 10 days in the 90s, and people who specialized in programming in those days were not really taken seriously, right? Somebody said that today, if you do not program JavaScript, then you are not taken seriously. Just like in those days, if you were programming JavaScript in those days, they will say, you're not a serious programmer. But today, if you are not programming in JavaScript, somebody said that you are not a serious programmer. So yeah, it is very efficient. It is the modern programming language of the web. So now we said it is the primary programming language that works directly in the browser. Somebody may ask, how about WebAssembly? How about TypeScript? TypeScript also runs on the browser. How about CoffeeScript? How about AM or ClojureScript? How about HTML or CSS that we've discussed? So WebAssembly is a browser-based tool that is like a configuration for your browser that makes it run faster. Look, consider playing games on a website. So those heavy graphic applications need something more than or beyond or aside JavaScript for them to really work effectively. So in terms of performance, so WebAssembly actually complements JavaScript. Again, JavaScript works directly on the browser, right? How about transpiled languages like TypeScript or CoffeeScript? So these languages, at the end of the day, they still need to be transpiled or recompiled to JavaScript, right? So when you write your TypeScript or your CoffeeScript, it must be converted again to what? To JavaScript. Of course, there are compilers for doing that, so you don't have to do it yourself. So once you just keep on developing your TypeScript or CoffeeScript behind the scene, it is compiled to JavaScript before it can even run on your browser. AM or ClojureScript, these are other technologies that kind of introduces functional programming, but again, they must be transpiled to JavaScript. So we can say that yes, JavaScript is actually the primary programming language for the web, right? HTML and CSS are not programming languages, right? I think we addressed this in the previous classes. HTML is a markup language to structure your web page. CSS is just to style the page. So they are really not programmable. They are not programming languages. Why again should we learn JavaScript? It is fairly easy to learn, as we'll discover. Although in comparison with Python is really, really easy to learn. And I think maybe PHP as well. But again, JavaScript is fairly easy to learn. It is closer to other high-level languages like Java and C# and the like. So, but it is totally different from those languages. We will still talk about why it was named JavaScript later on. It is an essential language for making web applications. Obviously, today you cannot develop websites without an element of JavaScript. It's in fact modern web development using frameworks like React, Next.js, Angular, Vue. All those JavaScript frameworks are based on JavaScript, right? So you need the knowledge of JavaScript to be able to develop websites today. Well, some people may say, they are back-end developers. They don't do front end. Hey, JavaScript also can be used for back-end. Thanks to what? Thanks to Node.js, right? So with Node.js, you can truly work on full stack application, meaning that from front end to back end, you are using JavaScript all through. But again, if you are not a JavaScript developer, you have your favorite programming language like Java or .NET or C Sharp, for example. Oh, that's good. You can keep on working on the back end or some other technologies. But again, by or from experience, most developers today, even though they have their primary programming language, maybe a .NET person or a Spring Boot, or that means a Java person or a Python person, they still need the knowledge of JavaScript for them to be able to create work on web projects as well, alongside working on the back end. Then lastly, what I have here is that there are many career opportunities for JavaScript developers. So if you are interested in working as a developer out there in the tech ecosystem, you can't be wrong with learning JavaScript. You cannot be wrong with learning JavaScript. So yeah, so these are the reasons why you should learn JavaScript. Then what are the key features of JavaScript? First and foremost, we can see it is we can use JavaScript in front-end development, right? So JavaScript is used on the client side, client meaning the browser or anything that enables you to load a web page, or that presents a user interface to your customer, to the user, is called the client side or the front end. That's another word: front end, client side, and all that. So you use JavaScript to add functionality like form validation, dynamic content updates, animations, user interface effects, right? So you want to use JavaScript to be able to do all that form validation, because when you validate your form from the front end, right, you are offloading part of the work from the back end to the front end. So it makes life easier, right? So some people, even though they are, like I just mentioned now, they could be back-end developers. They will not even concern themselves with what validations are being applied to at the front end. So the front end guys want to validate the front end so that you are sure that what the user is entering has been sanitized. The password is okay. At the place where you enter your email address is the correct email, or the email exists. So you do all those validations. For example, how many characters should you enter for a password? So those things can easily be handled in the front end instead of doing those in the back end. You leave the back end to do the heavy lifting, like the main logic, the main business logic of your application. You handle all those in the back end. So things like form validation, dynamic content updates, animations, user interface effects, you do all that in the front side, on the front end. So we can see libraries like jQuery and frameworks like React, like I mentioned, Vue.js, Angular. They all make use of JavaScript, so to be more powerful and easier to use for building complex user interfaces for the web. So the advent of Node.js has really made JavaScript to be one of the most powerful programming languages for the web, because now with Node.js, you don't even need to run your JavaScript on the front end. On the back end, you can use Node and then power your APIs from the back end, serving a Vue.js front end or an Angular front end or a React front end. So yeah, this is a great time to learn JavaScript. Then back-end development. So with the same JavaScript, you can write back-end or server-side code. Like we said before now, or before the advent of Node.js, JavaScript was only used to introduce interactivity to your web pages, but now it is way beyond all that. You can develop full application with just JavaScript, not even combining it with any other programming languages, right? So you use JavaScript for the backend as well with the help of Node.js. So this allows developers to use JavaScript to build entire web applications, handling both the front and backend, like we said. So that is called full stack development. So some people say they are full stack development or backend developers or front end developers. So those who are full stack developers, they can use that same language, in this case JavaScript, to work in the front end and as well as work in the back end. So that's that. Then JavaScript is also cross-platform. You can use JavaScript to develop cross-platform applications. Cross-platform meaning that with the same JavaScript, you can target different operating system, different environments, different platforms. That's the technical term. So that means with JavaScript, you can develop a mobile application, you can develop a desktop application. That same application can run on desktop, can run on mobile, on a mobile, and also Internet of Things. You must have been hearing IoT, Internet of Things. You can use JavaScript to develop applications for Internet of Things. In fact, with JavaScript, there is the modern term called low code, LOW, low code or no code environments. Platforms like ServiceNow, which is a very big one in the enterprise world. If you know JavaScript today, you can work in those environments. You can customize and develop applications for those low code environment. So it is cross-platform. Interactivity and asynchronous programming. That is one advantage of using JavaScript. You must have heard of async await or promises. So when a form is loading, right, without this feature, the form is going to block the main thread of that particular process. So that means you need to wait for the form to finish loading before your browser is active or before you can access different sections of of that particular page. But with async await and promises feature, that means you can load objects asynchronously. That means at the same time you are loading a form, at the same time a video is playing on that same web page. At the same time, there's a background process running, trying to populate something and all that. So JavaScript is asynchronous. It is asynchronous. It helps you not to block the main thread. That's the technical term. By the time we talk about Node.js, we'll understand what blocking of the main thread means. So this is crucial for creating responsive, interactive applications that provide a smooth user experience. Imagine having to load a form and then you click a button and you have to wait for like 5 seconds. You can't do anything. You can't click any other thing on that page. It's going to be, frustrating. That's a bad user experience. But if you click a button, you can do other things. You can click on that one, you can do that, do other things. That gives a good user experience. So JavaScript helps you to be able to achieve all that with the effect of asynchronous programming. Then browser integration. JavaScript works closely with document object model. You must have been hearing of DOM document object model. We'll talk about that later on. So allowing it to interact with and manipulate elements on a web page. For example, you want to submit a form. You need to capture those elements first. If you enter, your name, your password, your address, and all that, how do you capture those data, those pieces of data from those elements, on that web page? You use a feature of the browser known as document object model alongside JavaScript to be able to manipulate and interact with those HTML elements, right? So we'll talk about forms later on. So with forms, you can create, input elements, you can create text fields, check boxes, and all that to be able to get data from your user. So you use forms, HTML forms, to take data from the user. That is like more like the only way your user can, or I can get your user data from your web browser. So this is key for creating responsive and visually engaging web interfaces. So we'll still talk about that later on in this training, if not today, but some other classes. Then how about the ecosystem of JavaScript? Like I said, it is very, very popular. It is one of the most popular languages for developing frameworks, different tools, different libraries. So as a result of that, there is a huge community around the paradigm of JavaScript or what JavaScript can do. It could be a community around Babel. It could be a community around React or Next.js or Vue, or Node.js. All these are still based on JavaScript, and they have huge communities out there, meaning that one of the advantages of having a huge community is that there are resources available for you. So a beginner, for example, can easily go online and get things done. But that's not the same for a programming language like, let's say, Scala, or a programming language like all those old-time programming languages like COBOL, for example. You don't have a growing community because they are more or less, although there are still legacy code bases that are still being managed by people, but you don't have a growing community around those, and that means you won't see tutorials online, or you will not easily see tutorials online. You won't see different helps or documentations online. So a programming language is, somebody said Fortran. So a programming language is successful if you have a huge community around that particular programming language. So that means everybody wants to use it. Oh, you can easily Google it and get what you want. It is because you have a huge community that are using that language. So having said that, I mentioned something about the popularity of JavaScript. So every year there is a website called Stack Overflow. For those who are new to programming, Stack Overflow is an online community for developers. For those who are intermediates or who are already professionals in programming, you cannot do without Stack. In fact, what can you do without Stack Overflow? Thank God for Stack Overflow. Thank God for different platforms like that online. You can just Google things and you have answers to them. So Stack Overflow is a very popular programming community or online community for developers. So they carry out an annual survey every year. So if I click on this link now, let's look at this. This is for 2024 developer survey. Let's scroll down so there are different surveys here. Top 10 countries. USA has the largest programmers. That's what it means. Community, methodology, educational attainment, learning to code, and all that. But let's look at technology. Let's click on technology. So each year we explore the tools and technologies developers are currently using and the ones they want to use. If you look at most popular technologies, what's here? The number one here is what? Is JavaScript. I believe this survey was carried out 2024, but I think they had a total of 185,000 people who were surveyed or who gave their responses. So all over the world, different countries in the world. So we can see here JavaScript has 62.3% popularity, meaning that a lot of people are using JavaScript. Then followed by HTML and CSS, we have Python at 51%. We have SQL at 51% as well. We have TypeScript 38, Bash, Shell. So from here, you can start seeing different programming languages: C Sharp, C++, C, PHP, PowerShell, Go, Rust, Kotlin, Lua, Dart, Assembly, Ruby, Swift, R, Visual Basic, down to Zypher. I don't even know what that is, but it's a programming language. There is NIM, there is Crystal. Look at Cobol, I will mention Cobol, 0.7%. You can see there's Erlang, there is Ada, there is Fortran, 1.1%. So yeah, so this gives an idea of what should you even start learning. You want to begin programming and somebody is telling you go and learn OCaml, or go and learn Cobol, or go and learn Zig or Julia, right? Number one, what is the job prospect around those programming languages? Will you easily get a job? So this just gives an idea. So the fact that we're having 0.3% of users here means that there are not enough job opportunities available for this particular language. But how about these top languages here? JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Python, Java. One of the most popular languages in those days, in the early 2000s and all that. C Sharp, C++. These are languages. Of course, again, yeah, this is just a survey, right? It depends on those that were surveyed, but we can extrapolate, we can generalize. So if all over the world 185,000 people were surveyed and this is their result, we can generalize and say, yeah, this is fairly okay, this is fairly accurate, right? So, but having said that, there all these programming languages, Java, C Sharp for .NET, C++, they are still powerful languages that are being used in the enterprise world. They're still very, very marketable, very, very they are good on your resume. PHP is there and all that. So I just wanted to show you this. Look at databases. PostgreSQL, which is what we'll be using in this course, is the number one, followed by MySQL. SQLite is there. Microsoft SQL Server, MongoDB is there. You have cloud platforms. AWS is number one, obviously. Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. We have web frameworks and technologies. Node.js is number one, followed by React, jQuery, Next.js, Express. And then we have embedded technologies and so on and so forth. So at your spare time, you can go online and check this survey. But let's come back to, so let's write, so how do we set up JavaScript before we begin writing JavaScript? So how do we set up JavaScript? So there are two ways to run JavaScript, right? So you can run JavaScript directly in your browser, like we've explained, and also outside your browser, thanks to what? To Node.js. You can see why Node.js is coming up every time. It is because it is that powerful, and we saw it there that it is the number one framework for that people are using. So you can write your JavaScript in the browser and then outside the browser. So to write your JavaScript in the browser, you don't need to install anything at all. So most browsers today, if not all, they come with JavaScript engine, right? So once you launch your JavaScript, or you add your JavaScript to your web page, automatically the JavaScript engine runs or compiles or translates your JavaScript. It's a script, so we can say it translates your JavaScript in the browser. So for front-end development, you don't need to install JavaScript. But if you want to do back-end development, you want to write your JavaScript using Node.js, then you need to install Node.js, and you do not even need the browser at all to develop Node.js application, right? So it is going to be working in the back end, right? Of course, you need the browser for the front end. So after developing the front end and all that, you need Node.js to now power the front end from the back end. So you run JS outside the browser using Node.js. So first JavaScript program. Let's head over to VS Code. Let's see how to write our JavaScript. So this is week 6. I have my week 6 folder open. I have an index.html. So for today, we are discussing front end or browser based JavaScript. So we need to be able to embed the JavaScript inside the page. So that's why we need .html file for this. So we're having so a simple HTML markup. We know the meaning of this already, the head, the body, and all that. So now, how do we run our first JavaScript? Where do you write your JavaScript for the browser? So there are different ways, or 2 ways actually. You can put your JavaScript, you can write your JavaScript inside this head tag. You can see lines 4 to lines, somebody said dev. Yes, you can also write a JavaScript in DevTools. Yeah, we'll talk about that soon. So lines 4 to 8, this is the head. This is the HTML head section of your page. Don't confuse head with header, right? In our last class, when we're talking about laying out semantic HTML, we saw header, right? This header is just a semantic HTML for a div or a section of your page for the heading or for the header of your page. But this head here is totally different from what this header mean, right? So they have different meanings. So this head is like the meta section, or a section in your web page that kind of describes what that page should be. In this case, for example, the character set, I'm defining the viewport of the device, I'm adding a title to the web page and all that. So you can write your JavaScript here in this place using the script. There's a particular HTML tag called script. Script, if you can see, let me try to zoom in. So this is the script tag. So with your script tag here, you can write your JavaScript in between the script tag. So that means you put your source code here. You won't come to the body section and start writing your JavaScript int or let name equals James, right? You can see VS Code is not even highlight, it's just seeing this as a text, as a normal text, so it's not going to run, it's not going to compile this as a JavaScript. So for your browser to understand this line as JavaScript, it must come under the script tag. It must be under the script tag. You can see the highlighting now. VS Code has changed the highlighting for us, or added highlighting to, or colors to that line, to that statement. So you can see this is a keyword. Anytime you see, it depends on the theme actually. So I can't say you always see this kind of color for keywords. So depend on the theme or the what is it now? The theme you are using on your on VS Code. That will determine the colors the VS Code applies to your source code. So yeah, but this is a keyword, this is a variable. We'll still talk about that later on. Then this is a variable, or a value rather, this is a value. So that's number one. So you can write your JavaScript inside the head section, look at here, but within the script tag. That's one. Then number two, you can write your JavaScript inside the body section, but again, it must still be, let me cut this, or let me comment this out. Let me copy first. Comment, come here and paste. So look at this. So remember, I demoed the other time that you shouldn't put your JavaScript in the body section. But this time around, if you are going to put it in the body section, then wrap it with the script tags. This is the opening tag, and then this is what? The closing script tag, right? So there are two ways for doing that. So what are the pros and cons for this? So if we put it in the head tag, within the head section of your page, there are pros and cons, to doing this. Number one is that for the pros, we see it is useful for scripts that need to run before the page's content is displayed. When you have something like an analytics web page or website, you have configuration. So if you want that site, remember we said that the JavaScript engine or the rendering engine compiles or translates your markup from top to bottom, right? Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. So once it meets JavaScript at this point, it's going to compile this point first, right? Which means at the time spent compiling this JavaScript will kind of block the execution of the body part. Again, Node.js addresses all this, non-blocking and all that. But the good thing is that if you want your JavaScript to compile first before loading a page, there are different reasons why something should happen before a page displays. For example, you want to load something from the database in the background before the page even displays, right? Then you can put your JavaScript in the head section, right? That is one advantage of putting it inside the head section. But the cons is that it can delay the page. It can delay the page load time, like I explained, because it is trying to compile what is here. The body section is going to be blocked for a while. So it's going to block this part. Imagine you have, this is the main body of your page, right? This from this body to this closing body tag. You have so many lines of markup here, like 1,000, 2,000 lines of web page to display from here. But then you have a long running task from JavaScript that is running at this point. So it's going to block this, and then you discover that the browser freezes for like 1 second or 2 seconds. So it doesn't really give a good browser, a good user experience, right? So that's one disadvantage of doing it at the head section. But again, all these are noticeable when you have a big or a large project, that is doing so many things at the same time. But of course, doing something that, as we have on the web page now, doesn't really, you can put it in the head or in the body part. Somebody's asking, is there a way you can run both at the same time? Yes. So if the use case requires, we still talk about that. There are things you can do to defer, But again, if the use case requires that something loads first before the body comes up, or you need to load something in the body asynchronously, then you can defer. You can use the keyword defer, this keyword here. If I have something like this, let me do script, and we'll still talk about this, but let me just put this here. I have my source. I can actually defer. Look at this defer here, right? And I can use async. It says this Boolean attribute is set to indicate to a browser that the script is meant to be executed after the document has been parsed, but before the firing of DOM content loaded. So I'm saying, even though I'm putting this script on this, inside this head section, but don't execute it immediately. Define, hold on, let this body of this page, let the body section load first. Let the user, be able to interact with my website. I don't want to block my user. Let my web page load efficiently, effectively, without the user noticing anything. Then this script can now run, right? So that's one way of doing that. Then, so let's talk about putting it in. What are the pros and cons in putting the script inside the body section? So if we put it here, like we have this line 17 to 19. So if JavaScript is placed at the end of the body section, it loads after the page content has been parsed, obviously. So, and best practice is to put it as the last line before the closing body tag. You can see line 17 to 19. Nothing. Don't add more markups here. Don't put more markups after your JavaScript in the body tag, within the body tag. So make sure that JavaScript is the last thing before closing the body, so that everything you have above loads effectively, loads smoothly before JavaScript, is executed. So what are the pros and cons again? Number one is that the page's HTML content loads and renders first, like we said, making the page appear faster to users. Ideal for scripts that modify or interact with elements on the page, as these elements are already available in the document object model. But one con is some scripts that need to initialize right away may be delayed if they are placed at the end of the body. Imagine you want something to load in the background before your page loads, and then you are putting the JavaScript at this point. Then that will not be possible. That means the page is going to load first before that particular script runs, right? So like I said, there is a best practice. The best practice is to what? Is to put the JavaScript inside the body tag, right? But then using the defer in the head. So you can put it in the body tag like this, that's one, or you put it here but using the defer keyword in the head section. So yeah, but so we're just going to learn in this introductory class. We can put it anywhere. Like I said, this is not a huge, just think of Facebook homepage. Imagine the thousands and thousands of codes that is on Facebook homepage or Instagram homepage. Look at all the images and videos being displayed and all that. So that's when that's when you start appreciating what we are talking about, what we're trying to explain. But for something like this that we're just doing, you won't really notice any lagging or performance issues. Yeah. All right, so let me take away this. Let's write, take away this. So let's write our scripts, our JavaScript inside our head. But before then, let's talk about internal versus external JavaScript. So, in CSS, when we're talking about HTML and CSS, we said you can have your CSS embedded internally. In fact, we talked about inline CSS, internal CSS, and then external CSS. For external, you link to it, right? Using something like this, link style sheet href to where the CSS is. So similarly in JavaScript, we can actually do a JavaScript internally on this same markup or in this same markup like what we've seen already. For example, script inside here, let first name equals James. So we are writing our script inside this same HTML markup, right? Now imagine you have like thousands of lines of JavaScript, or, you know, 10,000 lines of JavaScript to write, and the HTML is also equally large, it becomes unmaintainable. Like, it becomes difficult to maintain, it becomes difficult to sort of manage. You cannot manage that particular page. So the best practice is, when your JavaScript is becoming very complex and large, you pull this out into a separate file, right? So that means, so if you pull this out into a separate file, for example, you can put the file externally. Let's call it main dot. So the extension for a JavaScript file is js.js. The extension for HTML is .html. The extension for Java is .java. The extension for CSS is .css. So we talked about this a while back. So if you do .js and you write your JavaScript, so you write a JavaScript there. Now let me do something. Let me copy all this. So I'm going to ask you a question. So is this correct? Well, you may not know, since we've not talked about it. So now, because this is now an external Java, this is a .js file, right? What we did here, we just introduced HTML to it. This is wrong. This is JavaScript will not even compile this. So when you are creating an external file, then you don't need to put it inside the script tag. The script tag is for HTML, right? And the script tag also enables you to load the page. So if I want to bring in my let me put this by the side here. So now I want to load this main.js inside this HTML file. How do I do it? So that's when the script tag now comes in again. So script with a source attribute, I can now say main.js. So what I have here, let me do this and this. So line 9 is equivalent to line 11 to 13. Line 9, because it is the same JavaScript statement I'm having in both files. Look at that line 12. Let first name equal James. Yeah, then look at line 1 here. Let first name equal to James. So line 9 is an external, you are referencing an external JavaScript file. But lines 11 to 12, you are embedding or writing your JavaScript internally in the same HTML. So those are the two methods. Those are the two methods for referencing your JavaScript. Somebody said, why are you using camel case? So now it's just a convention. Look at the camel. For those who don't understand what camel casing mean, look at first name is in lowercase, and then the first letter of the next word here, let me use word, is capitalized N, right? This is camel case. Like if you view the silhouette, or the is this silhouette now? The shadow of a camel. It goes, you can see it goes up and down. Let's say first name, let me name this first name is, look at this, down, up, up, down, up, and so on. So that's where the term camel case comes from rather. So first name, you start with the lower. This is how you name your variables. We'll still talk about variables later on. So this is just a convention. Now, if I do this, let me duplicate this. First name, second name is, now this your program is still going to work fine. So a convention is not a rule. Take note. A convention is not a rule. A convention is just a way to guide everybody in that particular programming language, right? So if somebody comes and says let second name is equals James, right? The person might say, okay, is this PHP, especially when these tags are not here? Of course, let. So now in some other programming language like PHP, they use this type of convention for naming variables. But in JavaScript and in Java as well, they use camel case for naming variables. So it's just a convention. It can be anything. You can name it anything. And of course, when we talk about how to name variables, you understand. For example, you can't put space here. You can't do first space name space. No, that is not a variable. You can't put a space in between variable names. So that is wrong. So we'll discuss all that later on. So these two lines are still the same thing. They're still going to compile. They're still going to run effectively. So that's that internal versus external JavaScript code. And then let's talk about console, like your web tool, your web console. Let's quickly look at that. So if we run this, let's run, let me comment out this. Let's comment out the external file first. We don't need that for now. So let's run, second name is, let's see, Badmos, for example. So let's run this HTML file. Again, you do your open with live server since it's, want to, let me bring it to this window. Now, this page, can you see anything on the page? It is blank, right? The page is blank, right? So how do we see the result of these two lines? First name is James, second name is Badmos. How do we even see this, right? So we can see the result of this from the web console. But how do we even tell the console to display this result? Then in JavaScript, you can use the console object. The console object comes with functions and other constants that you can use. So if I do console, yes, so somebody said log, yes. So console comes with a log function for display. That means if you do console.log, that means I want to put something on the console. What's even the console? Let's talk about the console first. So your web console is here. If you go to, let me pull this away from here. If you go to your dev tools, so there are different ways of getting to your dev tool. For example, you can go to tools. I'm using, this is Firefox. I believe on Google Chrome it's also tools. You go to browser tools and then you do web developer tools. That's one option. If you click on it, it's going to launch this web developer tool here. And then that's one way of doing that. Another way that I'm used to, or that I love doing very quick, you can just right click anywhere on the page and do inspect, right? Inspect. So inspect. So it brings up your developer tool. Now, in the developer tool, you can see several tabs here. You can also add more tabs when you add extension. For example, this is a Redux extension that I've added a while back. You can add more extensions to this developer tool. But the default ones that came with the browser, you can see inspector, you can see console, debugger, network, style, and so on and so forth. Then you see, if you go to console, this is your web console. This is where you see the output of your JavaScript, right? So let's now see. So with this page running, with this page, you can clear this as well. With this page running, we can now say console.log. We want to log first name. You copy the first, or yeah, whichever way, bring the first name here. If I want to start typing, VS Code will suggest it and you can just hit enter, right? So console.log first name. So if we go to our browser, can we see here? Can we see James here? James. Let me delete everything here and reload the page. Let me reload this page. Notice at this bottom, this section here, this prompt here. If I reload this, can you see James? This James is coming from this variable name, this value assigned to first name is, right? And then let me just rename this to give it a proper name. I can hold down my option key, press this. At the same time, I can update this, right? So same thing, hold down my option key. Okay, this is just once. So second name. So now look at James is the value assigned to this variable first name. And now I'm logging this variable console.log. So once the browser sees console and then log, is going to spit out whatever the value of this first name is, in this case James, and put it in the console. Where she's going to put it in the console. So this console object, helps you to log. There are other, if you do console dot, there are other functions here. You can see clear, count, console.group, console.error. There is even error. You can do error. For example, you are coding and you want to, maybe you are catching an exception, for example. I want to send the exception to the console. You can use something like this. So I can easily just flip. So James is showing. So how do we display the next one? So now this introduces the concept of we'll talk about code structure, statements, semicolon versus no semicolon. Now let me so I want to display second name as well, right? I said second name as it is written here is not the normal convention for JavaScript, but again, it's not a rule. So it's still going to work, but it's not the right convention. So if I do console log second name, I'm zooming so you can see my code well. So console log second name. So let's go back to our browser again. You can see, remember we have live server running. So automatically the page, once I change anything, the page reloads. So that's why we can see, automatically the variables are being displayed here. So James Badmus. Now let's talk about statements. What are statements in JavaScript? In some programming languages, they will say use semicolon. Some, like in Python, you don't need to terminate and all that. So in JavaScript, it is not really strict. It is not. It's not a strict language in terms of how to terminate. For example, you can see I did not use semicolon in line 15 and line 16, and our code is still running. Look at, it's still running. If I reload this page, James and Badmus are still showing. So the reason is that somebody's asking, please, can you go over how we'll see the name we put in our code? Okay. So quickly, once you've declared your variable, you've assigned a value to the variable, you do console.log. But where will you see the result? Remember, you can't see the result here on the console. The internal console, where is it here? Terminal. So you can see my terminal is blank here, right? Remember, we are doing front-end JavaScript. This is front-end JavaScript. By the time we start working with Node.js and we're doing back-end JavaScript, then your console is going to log the result to this console here. This console which is outside the browser. So this console is not in the browser. This a terminal or console within VS Code, or it can be you can do it anywhere. It can be a terminal, your console outside VS Code as well. So once you start running JavaScript and you want to see the result on your internal, on your console here, then that JavaScript is not browser-based JavaScript. For example, you can't do DOM manipulation with Node.js and all that. But for this is the JavaScript is running on the browser. So we have to go to the browser console for us to see the results. Again, how did I get to the console? Let me close this. You can right click. Let me close this. You can right click, go to inspect, right? Go to inspect. It's going to launch the developer tool and then just go to console here. That's one way. The other way is to go to tools, under the menu, go to browser tools and then web developer tools. It's going to launch the same console. So again, to recap, for browser or front-end JavaScript, the console is display the console where you see the results is going to be the browser console. But for back-end JavaScript like Node.js, it's going to be the console outside of your browser. For example, like your terminal, in your VS Code, or your command prompt in Windows, and all that. So that's where you see the output of your Node.js JavaScript, which runs outside the browser. So I was talking about semicolon versus no semicolon. Look at line 12 has a semicolon, line 13 has a semicolon. What if I take them off? Will it still run for this JavaScript code? I can close this. Will it still run? So let's see. Let's go back to, let's refresh our page. Yep, it's still running. James, Badmus are still showing. So which means in JavaScript, it is not a must for you to terminate your statements with a semicolon. Unlike other high-level languages like Java, C#, C++, it is a must. In fact, once you don't put a semicolon, the compiler is going to flag an error. It's going to tell you that you've not terminated that particular statement. So, but what if I have it this way? What if I have, look at line 15, I'm moving this to the same line. Look at line 15, console log first name. Immediately I do console log second name. So let's see what, in fact, VS Code is already telling us something. I think we need a semicolon somewhere around here. But let's try to run our code. I think we should get an error. Yeah, so it has been loaded already. You can see it says uncaught syntax error, unexpected token identifier. So even though we said semicolon is not necessary in JavaScript, that only applies on a single line, on a single statement. So, but if you have statements on the same line, you must tell the compiler the end of a particular statement. So a semicolon tells the compiler, terminate this first statement. This is the end. When you are compiling this line 15, there are two parts to this line 15. The first part ends at the semicolon, and the second part starts after the semicolon. So take note, when you have statements on the same line, terminate your statement with what? With a semicolon. So if I run this now, let's go back, let's refresh. You can see James and Badmus are displaying, right? So take note of that. Then having said that, because semicolon has been a thing from the very popular high-level languages in the past, like the Javas of this world, the C# of this world, the C++ of this world, it is now recommended, right? It is now recommended to always terminate your code, because if you don't terminate your code, somebody may be debugging or reviewing your code and something like this happens. Look, let's go back to this again. Look at line 12 and 13. If another person comes and is trying to maybe update your code and mistakenly the person brings line 13 to this point, already a bug has been introduced to your code, so your code is not going to work, right? But if the semicolon is already there, you know, the author of this program has already put a semicolon here and semicolon here. Another person is trying to edit this code and mistakenly now takes this line 13 back to line 12. You can see clean, you know, nothing, no bug, nothing is going on. So that is why it is recommended that in JavaScript, terminate your statements with semicolon. So take note of that. So what is a statement? A statement is one piece of instruction that is executed by the compiler. For example, line 12 is a statement. Why? It is a statement because we are terminating this. It has, you know, the keyword here. We are declaring a variable with a variable name equals this. This is a statement. But how about this? If I do let first name, or let's do middle name. Oh no, let's still do first name. Now we're still going to talk about some things here. Now we're having bug in our code. Can anybody tell us why we're having? Look at line 12 and 13. Can anybody tell us why we're having that red underline? Line 12 is a valid JavaScript line. Line 13 is also a valid JavaScript line. But somebody said repetition. Okay. But repetition, what if I take out this let here? I want to see repeating first name. First name is still being repeated, but now the bug is gone, right? Same var name, yes. So when you've declared a variable at line 12, then I want to declare this variable with the same name again, then the compiler is going to tell you, cannot redeclare. Look at this expression here. It says cannot redeclare. Let's go back. Let me put this here. Look at it says cannot redeclare block scope variable first name. It is already declared, right? So if you need something like this, you don't have to redeclare it again. Take away the keyword. But I'm trying to explain the difference between a statement and an expression. So line 12 is really not a statement, it's an expression. In programming, they call it an expression. Here, we've only declared a field or a variable, but we've not really assigned anything to it. It's an expression. But then line 13, we're now assigning a value to that name. Then that now becomes a statement, right? So here we can see two ways of declaring a variable and assigning value to it. You can do it in two lines, like we can see it in 12 and 13, or do it straight in one line. Let first name equals James. Now there are different advantages, right? Or there are use cases. Let's say use cases. You may want to, you may not know what the value will be at line 12. Let's say we have a field called a variable called let's say network error. Now you are loading a web page. You don't know whether there's going to be a network error or not, right? At this point, we can just declare that variable. We can say, okay, this line 12 known as network error. I don't know whether there's going to be an error or not at this point, but down my script, then I want to now call this network error maybe somewhere here, and I'll say, oh, I'm just going to code this. There is a network error, right? So I'm just hard coding this, right? But you know, an ideal case is maybe there is an exception. So if there is a network failure, the exception is thrown, then you now assign that exception message to this network error variable. So that is like a simple use case for declaring first before assigning, right? So at this point, we don't know what the future value of this is going to be. We just want to declare it here, and later on down our code, we can now assign, uh, you know, that. So this is an expression. This is a statement you are declaring and then assigning at the same time. So we can see, are we having the same result? Yes. So I see having James and Badmus still being displayed for us. So how about comments? How do we comment? Okay, I've already demoed this. So you comment your JavaScript using 2/. So if I comment out line 12, you can see that's a single line comment. You also have a document comment, right? Let me do comments. So I can do this as well. So this is a multi-line or document comment. This is a comment. This is also doc comments to document your code. So that's that. I think we saw this in CSS CSS. You can do something like this in CSS. So let's talk about JavaScript variables. So a variable is a container for a value, right? If we do variables, a variable is a container for a value. For example, how do we declare variables? Before ES6, we'll still talk about that. Before ES6 and all the versions of JavaScript from ES6 and above, we're declaring variables with the var keyword, var. So var, let's say age equals 20, right? So look at that line 27. I've declared a variable var age equals 20. So this is how I used to declare variables pre ES6 days. That means all the ECMAScript 6. So JavaScript has there are, if I can remember the name of the body that controls JavaScript, but I think it's called ECMA Foundation or something. So ECMA Foundation, they are the ones releasing JavaScript versions every year and all that. So there's, I think the latest one now is ES20. Let's check. Latest JavaScript version. Is it 2020? ECMAScript 2023. Yes, that's ES14. So, but if you've been hearing ES6 is so popular because it is like the major version of JavaScript that was released after those times when JavaScript was not really taken seriously, when there were so many bugs and all that. So ES6 is so popular. That's ES6 actually JavaScript, if I can remember, 2000 and is it 2015 or 2010? I can't remember. Anyways, so ECMA Foundation, they are the ones controlling or releasing versions of JavaScript. Look at ES1, ES2, ES3. If we go here, let's see. So yeah, ECMAScript 1 was 1997, ES2 was 98, ES3 99, ES4 never released. So this was never released. ES5, okay, was 2009. Yes, I'm right. So ES6 was in 2015. So it added various features like the let variables and the likes. There's 2016, 2017, there's now 2020. So they've introduced so many variables and features to JavaScript. So, but back in the day, they had var as a way of declaring variable. So the one downside of the var variable is that it's a global variable, meaning that if we declare a block, although we've not talked about functions, but let's do something. Let's say, let me see if this will work. Let's say if age, or let's say if 1 equals 1. Let's just do something here. Console log let's declare this. No, let's do this here. Let's take this out. Console log age. Now what have I done? Let's just quickly run this and see what will happen. Yes. So you can see 20 that's appearing here. This 20. Hope you can see my console 20. Now there's something called scoping. We'll still talk about that. I just wanted to explain this var at this point. This curly bracket at line 28 and 30 makes this a block of code, right? Ideally, any variable you declare at this point should be local to this. Let's do let age. Let's do this one here. Let's do let age 2 equals 23. Then console log age 2 as well. Variable has a global scope, while let has a local scope. So look at line 34 is declared within this curly braces. All variables here should be local to these curly braces. So if I try to reference that curly brace outside this bracket with a let keyword, it's not going to work, because this age 2 is only limited to this scope. The interpreter or the compiler cannot see age 2 at line 38. This line 38. So let's check our browser. Let's see our output. So 20 is displayed here, but not 23. Look at 23. 20 is displayed because var has a global scope. So take note, var has a global scope. So anywhere in the code, I can call this age, and JavaScript will interpret it correctly. Yeah. So there are pros and cons again. So that's why in later releases of JavaScript from ES6 and above, they now introduce the let keyword, the const keyword. If you want to declare a constant, const age3 equals 25, right? So these two keywords are limited to this scope. The compiler will not see age2 and age3, but it's going to see age here because it is global. So take note of that. JavaScript variables, talked about that. Then briefly we talked about naming of variables. How do you name variables? Somebody's asking, okay, thanks for the clarification, but the condition in the bracket of the if statement should return true. So why is it not seeing age2? So yeah, Isaac, so what we're trying to do here, which I've explained, it is returning true. That is why we can see age, right? It is returning true. That's why we can see age. That means it's assigning 20 to age, and we can print out age, even though this variable age is now global at this point. This is true. That's why it goes into this. Assuming, let's make this is 1 equal to 2. No. Let's see the output of our code. See? Undefined. Can you see undefined here? Undefined. 20 is gone. It is because this condition is not true. We will still get to control structures and all that. So because this condition is not true, the compiler will not even enter into this curly brace. So line 35, 36, and 37 are not even visible to the compiler because this condition is not true. But if the condition is true, if 1 equals 1, that's true, then the compiler can come into this block, execute line 35, assign 20 to age, execute line 36. It's going to execute it. Take note, assign 23 to age 2, execute line 37, assign 25 to age 3. But outside the block from line 40, or let's say line 39, outside the block, we want to now call or print out or refer to these variables that are already existing. Yes, they are existing somewhere because they've been declared and they have values. But we are calling it outside the scope. The scope meaning that this curly braces gives it a local scope, gives it a scope, is a block of code. So this is a local scope. So now, so we're calling age. Let's also do age 3. So let's see, do we still have, so look at, so because this is now true, age is going to be called at this point because it has a global scope. Take note, global scope. Line has a local scope to this block of code. That means from 34 to 38. This also has a local scope to this block. So look at it. So meaning that if I want to see age 2 and age 3, I'll have to bring these lines into the block. Look at this closing brace and this opening brace, housing all these together, right? So at this point, age 2 and age 3 can then be displayed or can be printed on the console because I'm printing them inside the same block. But for age, I can print age both within this block or out and outside the block. Look at, and we're going to see the results now in the block. So look at this console log is in the block. Let's do outside the block. Outside, if I can type outside the block. So let's see the results. So let's look at it again. From line 34, there is a conditional expression here. This is true, obviously. 1 equals 1. Assigns 20 to age using the var keyword. Assigns 23 to age 2 using the let keyword. Assigns 25 to age 3 using the const keyword. But now let's print out all those variables still inside the scope, inside the block, the scope. So let's come back here. See, look at, in the block is 20, 23, 25. Outside the block is still 20. So outside the block here, we're able to print age because this is a var keyword. So take note, that's what I'm trying to explain. For example, if we change this to let, let's change this var to let. All of a sudden, age is now only declared and accessible within this block, not outside the block in line 43. Let's check our code, our result again. See, in the block is 20, but outside the block is gone. We cannot even see it. Hope we are following. Let me comment out this so we can see only the results that we need. So look at, let me refresh. So in the block is 20, 23, 25. 23 and 25 are within the block, right? So let me do this for this as well. These are the basic things you must understand in programming. And then, yeah, you're welcome, Isaac. So this is now outside. All right, so in the block, outside the block, all of them let. So let's see what will happen. So go back. We may want to refresh. So you can see in the block, right? But let's change it to var and var. So let's see the output. Ooh, in the block, outside the block. So take note of that. So now it's not even recommended to. So because of this behavior of var, right? It can introduce bug to your code. You know, it has its own use case, but modern JavaScript tries to avoid using var, right? So take note of that. So we've talked about variable scoping, and we'll talk about camel notation, strings, data types. So let's talk about data types. So there are different types of data types. What we mean by data types is what type of data, like is it an integer, is it a number, is it a Boolean variable? That's what data types stands for. So in JavaScript, there are basically about 5 data types. We have the string. Let me write that here. Data types. So you have string, as we've demonstrated here. Anything that has quotation, for example, I can say let's address equals. So in JavaScript, you can either use single quotes or double quotes. I think in some other programming languages, you must always use, I think Java, you must always use double quotes for strings. So let address equals Conan Road, right? So this is a string because you are quoting the string. Are we getting it? We are quoting the string. How about Boolean variables? For example, I can expressly or explicitly define a Boolean operator and say let something like a student. These are just convention, right? I'm using is. It's like you're asking a question, true or false, right? So it's just a convention, right? So you can use anything there. Is student true or false, right? So you can see how VS Code highlighted this. So it's a keyword. So that's a Boolean expression where you have true or false, right? Then you can also have basic data types. There's also one undefined. Undefined is also a data type in JavaScript, whether you like it or not. Undefined. undefined, because there are times you may want to check whether something is defined or not. So undefined is a data type. Then you also have null. Null is another data type. Null is a data type. For example, I can assign something to null. Fetching. Let's say fetch. Oh no, let's not use fetch. What can we assign to null? Let's say location equal to null. You can see it's a data type as well. So there are different data types that I can use in JavaScript. So how do you manipulate these types of data or type conversion? Like I explained the other time, how do you operate on these data types? There is arithmetic operators. We're almost out of time. There's arithmetic operators. How do we work on operators? Operators in JavaScript. So there are different operators, right? Like I said, there is arithmetic operators. You have assignment. We've been seeing assignment all this while. When you do something equals something. Somebody's asking, how do we make use of undefined? Yes, undefined is just declared as undefined. For example, if you want to check if a particular variable, if age equals undefined, that's it. That means if that variable does not exist, right, do something, right? So that's how you use undefined. So there is the null. Okay, we'll talk about null as well. So assignment operators, assignments. We've been doing assignment all this while. For example, this line 57, we are assigning something to something. Let's location 2 or 1 equals something, right? Equals Lagos, Nigeria. So that is an assignment operator. So to be honest, all this looks very strange to me. Yes, it's gonna be strange. What will be the desired result from all what you're trying currently? Yeah, I understand. So this is introductory, right? We must learn, we must understand all this before you can start working on projects. So please don't just jump to writing projects, or no, you must understand the basics. So this is programming. You can see this is totally different from HTML and CSS that we did. So this takes patience, please. It takes patience. Go through this rudimentary stage, understand how variables are defined, and then we can now start applying them to projects. So yeah, I understand it can be confusing, especially for a beginner. So what are we even doing? What are we trying to do, right? So the only thing that we can do here is we try to see the console. Maybe we'll do arithmetic operation, which I'm still going to do. We add two numbers, multiply two numbers together. We're going to do all those operations. But yeah, I understand it can be boring at this stage. But by the time we start working on projects, applying JavaScript to forms, loading forms, creating database queries, submitting results and all that, that is, much more interesting. But yes, you have to go through this stage to learn the basics, right? So let's take note of that. So operators, what are operators? Let's do, so I mentioned, so this is an assignment operator. I'm assigning this to this, or let me say, let num1 equals 25. So this is an assignment operator, right? That's just basic definition. But let num2 equals 34. But let's now do an arithmetic expression. So how do we arithmetic operation now? The plus, negative, minus, addition, subtraction. So let's do arithmetic operators. So for example, let's log console.log num1 plus num2. What do we get? So now you can now start thinking of, oh, okay, can I develop a calculator with this? That's a good project to start thinking about, as somebody who's new to programming. You can start thinking of how do I create a calculator for myself? That's a good project you can start with. But let's see this arithmetic operation in the browser. Let's see. I have bugs in my code. Non-convenient global property. Let me see. What do I have bugs in my code? Let me close this and reopen. Open with live server. Bring this here. It's open in a different window, so I want to bring it here. Inspect console. Something is wrong. Live reload enabled. The declaration of none. Oh, I'm declaring a variable. So let's just comment out. No. Where is it? So let me comment out all this down to, since we're working with operators now. Address, location. This is called debugging. So now let num1 equals this, num2 equals this. Now I'm doing console.log num1. You can as well assign, instead of doing this here, I can as well just do let result. You can assign that equals num1 plus num2, right? And then what do we do here? We just log out. We'll console log result instead, because result is now holding num1 plus num2. So can we see my screen? Can we see 59 here? I think it's too small. Can I maximize? With this console? Oh, okay. I can maximize it. Yep, that's good. So can we see 59? Yeah. So look at this expression here. This is called expression. I'm doing num1 is assigned, or 25 is assigned to num1. 34 is assigned to num2. I'm doing an arithmetic operator, using an arithmetic operation here to add num1 plus num2. This is the result, right? What if we do console log, nope, console.log num1, let me just do it directly here, minus num2. There's nothing called num, so let's check our browser again. You can see -9. Can we see -9? So let's do division. So let's do multiplication first. Num1 times, you multiply with the asterisk sign in programming. So you use the asterisk sign. You don't use just normal x. No, you use the x. That's the operator. That's the multiplication operator. You use the asterisk sign to multiply. So this is, so let's see. What is 25 times 34? The result is what? Is 850. See? Let me pull this up so we can see my console clearly. So that's that. Then how about exponentiation? Exponent. How do you do exponent? You use double asterisk. So double asterisk, if I do this star, that means num1 raised to the power of num2. I believe it's going to be a huge number, but let's see. What will be the precision point? So num1 raised to the power of num2. Ooh, can you see? 3.38 and so on to the power of 47. E raised to power 47. So that's exponent. This is exponent. So how about division? Division. Same thing. Division, you do just this one is straightforward. Num1 divided by, this is the division operator, by num2. Remember, num1 is 25 divided by 34. So what do we have? 0.7352 and so on. Then we now have, let's talk about these three. I know the time is 4:01, but let's really talk about these three operators: the remainder operators, and then the increment and decrement operators. So remainder, this is, you need to know this. For example, you want to calculate leap year. You need to know you need to know how to use the remainder operator. Or you want to divide a number by something and you need what the coefficient or the remainder, so you use let me copy this here. So if I divide num1 by num2, what is the remainder? And this is the operator. Use the modulo sign, this percent sign. It means I'm dividing num1 by num2, but don't give me the result. What I want is the remainder, right? What is left after dividing num1 by num2? For example, let's use something that we can easily run ourselves. Let's say num1, you can see how I'm reassigning. Num1 equals 1. The same variable, num2 equals 2. That's programming for you. So you can later on reassign, you can change the value of that variable to something else. Meaning that from 76 downwards, num1 is now 1, num2 is now 2. But before this line 76, num1 is 25, num2 is 34. So it is allowed. You can reassign variables. So now, when we divide 1 by 2, what should be the result? Let's check. You can see remainder is 1. But the normal division should give us 0.5, right? Let's do the normal division here. Let's do normal division here. The top is the remainder, the bottom is the normal division. So let's see this. You can see this is 1, this is 0.5. There are use cases for this. There are times you need this. Even in big projects, even in projects that it's not a mathematical project, right? So try to wrap your mind around all these concepts. You need all these concepts for you to think like a programmer. So this is the remainder operator. This is the division operator. So when you divide 1 by 2, the remainder is 1 mathematically, which is this. And then the increment and decrement. Yes, you have all this in all other programming languages. In Python, in Java, all programming languages have these arithmetic operations or operators. So how about decrement and increment? Let's start with increment operator. For increment, it is the plus plus operator. For example, I can console log num1, let's see, plus plus. This means that I'm increasing the value of num1 by 1 and reassigning it to itself. Just a simple expression. This means this num1 equals num1 plus 1. That's the meaning. Let me comment this out here. But let's run this first and see the results. So on cut reference error, console is not defined. Sorry, console, not console, console. So let's see. Oh, now you can see we're having one here, right? Num1 is plus plus. Look at num1 plus plus. But let's see the difference between this. Programming is very interesting. Let's do plus plus num. This might be confusing, but I'll try my best to explain these two concepts. Now, look at line 82. Num1 plus plus means that it's going to return the value of num1 afterwards reassigning, doing the arithmetic operation. So remember num1 from line 76 is 1, right? So after doing plus plus, let me move this out so that, let me do let's inc num1 equals this. Let's see the output. So let's do inc num1 here. Let me comment out this one first. Let's try to understand this. So look at line 82. Line 82. Let me still do this here. I want to make sure that let's do this. So line 82 has console.log plus plus num1. Let me comment out this so that we'll have a clean console. Clean console. Then at line 83, I'm doing num1 plus plus, right? Assigning it to num1 before printing it. So let's see the result. 2, 2. So let's try to analyze this. So what this means is that, look at, this is going to do plus plus num1. It's going to increment num1 first and print it. This line 82 will increment num1 by 1 and assign it to the value. So which means num1 in 82 is now 1 plus 1. So it's going to give us 2. Look at 76 is 1. Line 82 is, this is 1 plus 1. This is 2. Now that's that. But now the same, let me comment out this 82. But we are now reversing it. Num1 plus plus, not plus plus num1. Take note. What this means is that it's going to assign num1 to this particular variable before incrementing num1. So, which means if I console log num1 here, so let's see. What is the value of inc num1? Now, let's dry run this. Assign num1 to inc num1 from above here, line 76. Num1 is 1, right? It's going to assign 1 to num1. Afterwards, it now increases num1 by 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. But this line, we are printing inc num1. So the value is going to be 1. It's going to be 2 rather. 1 plus 1 is going to be 2, which is what we're having here. Right? Or it's going to be 1 rather. So it's going to assign num1 to inc num1 first. And then that value is going to be 1. And we are printing out that value. But because we are doing plus plus, it's going to now increment the value of num1 by 1. So 1 plus 1, that's 2. So we are printing num1 at this point. Num1 is now 2. I hope I was able to explain this. Any question? Any question? This is a part of programming that you have to really understand. So your increment and decrement operator, when the operator is after the variable, the variable gets to be assigned first before it is incremented. Take note. But when the operator is before the variable is incremented first and then assigned to whatever you're assigning it to, or to itself, like in this case. So that's the meaning. So 82, increment num1 by 1 first, print it out. 1 plus 1 here, that's 2, which is these 2 that we're having here, this first 2 here. But from 83, remember 83, we're still making use of num1. So num1 is now 2 from 82. So, but because the operator is at the end, is after the operator, it's going to pick 2, it's going to use 2, assign 2 to this inc num1, and we are printing out 2. So 84 should give us 2. So that's this 2, this second 2 here, right? Now, remember, num1 is 2, right? From after incrementing, doing plus plus. Now 85, we're printing out num1. Num1 is still going to be 2. These are the kind of questions they will ask you when you are writing certification exams. You want to write JavaScript exam. They will bring something like this and say, what will be the output of line 82 versus line 84 and line 85. So, but if you don't understand this concept, you're going to choose the wrong answer. So yeah, this is 412. I believe we can end here. We're going to continue. We still have other parts that we need to cover before we start applying all this. So like control flows, functions. How do you write functions? How do you even declare objects in JavaScript? So in our next class, we're going to finish that, and hopefully once we are done with that, then we can start working on projects. So any question? Somebody's asking, what text or resource can you recommend for JavaScript? Yeah, JavaScript, just check MDN. Check, there are many, like Free Code Camp is there. Especially for beginners, you can see Free Code Camp, Code Academy. Let me see. JavaScript Free Code Camp. So yeah, see, JavaScript, you can click on this. How to use developer tools. So many things are here, but for beginners, you can see, let me see, legacy JavaScript. Yeah, for this one, yeah. So you can see full JavaScript course for beginners. You can see all that here, the basics, building a passenger counter app, setting up JavaScript file, writing your first JavaScript, basic mathematical operation like we just did now, reassigning it. See, I talked about this, adding a button, the on-click event. So we'll talk about all this later on. When you click a button or when you perform actions on your page, it's called events. They are event listeners that you can register on your elements to listen to events on the page. So there's increment, display. So yeah, you can just go through this, and I'm sure it has videos as well. Free Code Camp should take you to a video. Yeah, see, this is a YouTube video. You can watch it and see how to learn JavaScript. Also, MDN is here. You can Google JavaScript reference, what is JavaScript, tutorials, learning so JavaScript first steps, what you need to do, requisites, guide, first splash into JavaScript, thinking like a programmer. You know, I mentioned something like this. So this is a form. You can put in values and submit. For example, you can see enter a guess, number guess. Like if I say 5, submit. Previous guess was 05. If I say, it says last guess was too low, so let's go up. Let's say 7 guess, Still too low. Let's say 10. So yeah, so this is a form, right? This is an input field. This is a button, and there's an event attached to this. When you click on it, an action takes place and things like that. So yeah, so just go online and try to start playing around with JavaScript. So in our next class, we'll finish up this introductory part, and then we'll start working on projects. Again, I almost forgot. So this is week 6, right? And I said from week 6 you are going to have your midterm project. So please watch out for an email from us that contains what you're going to be working on um, for your midterm project. So rest assured, it's going to be everything we've done from the beginning. So that means your CSS, HTML, and maybe a little JavaScript, right? So at least you've learned something today. So yeah, so please watch out for an email for your midterm project, and then you can start working on that. And by week 12, how should we do this? So you're also going to have a final project which you are going to work on in your last week of the project. So please take note of that as well. So yeah.